Discussing a lecture on Ralston College. The title of the lecture is From Homer to Gutenberg. I like the lecture because it's a nice way to describe the history of knowledge, how knowledge proliferated from the origins of Western culture, the Greek poems of Homer, all the way to Gutenberg, which was the beginning of the printing press in the 16th century, and then the probably you can say the launch of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. So there's a direct line between the origins, as we know it, of Western culture in ancient Greece and the scientific revolution of today. So I want to talk about this for two reasons. One is just epistemology. Here at Orange Capital Partners, we spend quite some time actually talking about the creation of knowledge, the history of knowledge, because we consider ourselves in the knowledge business, and therefore we do care about these things. And then second, I think it's also a nice reminder of where we come from. And I think one of the big messages of Ralston College, which is a very nice institution in Savannah, Georgia, is that in order to look forward, we have to look back. In other words, we can only step forward into the future with a solid grounding in our history. This is not even on podcast. It's May 4, 2025. This is Krim Delco. For the year, we're down 30%. The market's down 5%. We're underperforming by 25%. So this is a conversation about a lecture. The links in the show notes at Ralston College. This is a small college founded in 2010, which has, as far as I know, only one program now, and that is Masters of Arts with concentration of ancient Greece. And I think the goal of Ralston College is to be a beacon of Renaissance culture in modern American culture. So in other words, we want to replicate, or they want to replicate, and I do agree with them, so I am happy to include myself here. We want to replicate what happened during the actual Renaissance in Florence and Venice and so forth today, because we are at a crossroads culturally where we have very destructive forces all culminating into what recently was named the woke movement, but it's much broader than that. There is an anti-knowledge culture, an anti-progress culture, Malthusian, destructive, socialist, anti-beauty type attitude around the elites of our society, and that's what's so scary. This is not coming from Marxist blue-collar worker union types who just want to bring down the elites, which that would be concerning also. It's actually almost the opposite. It's coming from the elites, and it's only being prevented by those so-called less intelligible, less maybe fortunate blue-collar types. They want to preserve our history while the elites want to destroy it. So within that backdrop, I think I don't want to go too much into the politics, but for listeners, there's plenty of sources of where we stand today, not just in the U.S., but also in the Western culture, in Europe particularly, as far as knowledge and knowledge creation and progress and our relationship to history is concerned. And I think it's fair to say that there's a big movement, particularly amongst academia and also amongst politicians, to reverse progress, to fall back into Malthusian stagnating growth phase. Also, our birth rates are falling. So basically, our society is stagnating. And to paraphrase Peter Thiel, we are not optimistic and we don't have a can-do culture. And I think what Ralston College is trying to do on their part is to re-establish that can-do culture, that optimistic, I want to progress in life. I want to build a better future for my kids. And that I want to do this with a solid foundation in moral philosophy and technology. So that's, I think, the goal of Ralston College. And within that backdrop, this lecture, From Homer to Gutenberg, is a really nice poetic explanation of the history of knowledge, which starts in Greece with poets like Homer and the famous Odysseus, and all of these stories that are the basis of Western culture, in a sense that they give us the blueprint for the technologies that we use to proliferate knowledge, which is incredibly important. So what is that? The technology it starts with oral reproduction of stories. Basically, we tell each other stories, and then it gets to the written word, but in a poetic way. So we use verse to express stories and narratives. And the narrative plays a big role here. And I think the invention of literature per se, in my opinion, one of the most important technological inventions of humankind, because what literature does, it transmits knowledge from generation to generation. Now, language is a very, very important sort of subdivision of that technology. And I think I'm a big proponent of the idea that there was language before there was speech. So language has been around for a long time in many different ways. There's the whole philosophical movement of semiotics, it's not symbiotics, it's semiotics, which means that there's language everywhere. There's language in forests, language between animals, people communicate, living beings communicate all the time, even non-living beings, such as rocks or oceans, they communicate. There is always anything that moves, anything that is created under the cosmos is communicating. And the ability to understand and reproduce and maybe infer knowledge from there, that is really unique to humans, at least as we know. So then that is what we call intelligence, and that has made us the dominant force on Earth. And if we follow David Deutsch's beginning of infinity, probably will also put us at the center of the universe, because we have this creative ability to change the course of cosmological events under the laws of physics. So we have, again, Homer, and then we have the Roman Empire taking over Greece and sort of leaning onto the knowledge that was developed in ancient Greece, in Athens, and places like that, but not really understanding it. The phrase, "this is all Greek to me," comes from those times when the Romans would read Greek texts and not understand them. And they didn't make the effort to learn the Greek language because they were the conquerors, they were the rulers. And the Latin language of Rome for a long time was not compatible with the Greek. And the knowledge that we often actually associate with the Greco-Roman culture is really, according to this lecture by this gentleman, it's Greece. It's all ancient Greece. The Romans weren't that interested in proliferating the knowledge of ancient Greece. Now, they did some of it, of course, but most of it actually was transpired through the Middle East, the Phoenicians, and then the Moors in northern Africa that cultivated, particularly after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, they cultivated a lot of Greek texts and translated the Greek texts into their language and used the technology and the knowledge for warfare and architecture, and that allowed them to become very powerful, culminating in the Alhambra in Granada, which was the sort of beachhead of the Moor Empire on the European Peninsula, on the Iberian Peninsula, or Europe, but also the beacon of knowledge and knowledge preservation. From there, those texts, which again were in the Moor language, were translated back into Latin and then cultivated throughout the monasteries and the monks of the Christian world until Gutenberg took it and printed it, and then the Reformation came, and the Latin was translated into vernacular, and then the scientific revolution took off. So this is a short history of the lecture, and I think it's really important to to understand where where does this come from, this thing that we call science, and this idea to understand nature, and this urge, this curiosity to change the course of nature through technology. There's a saying that I also got inspired by from Ralston College, which is God communicates to us through beauty, and technology is how we respond. This is my addition to this quote. And I think that I like this very much. And this is very powerful. Like we have, we're given beauty by God, or by this thing, whatever you want to call it, God, nature, cosmos. I call it God. We're given beauty in mathematics, beauty in a machine that works. Nikola Tesla's invention of the electric motor is beautiful. Everything that has this magic effect on us, this beauty, comes from God. It's not something that we make out of nothing. We discover it. And then we respond with technology, meaning we take that beauty, we take the electric motor, we build technology around it. We take quantum physics, we build technology around it, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And I think for us here on Capital Partners, we're deeply invested in progress and technology and the proliferation of new engineering practices and concepts and disruptive technologies, because we believe that that's the best way to leave a better world for future generations, which is not just our purpose as a fund, but also our purpose as human beings. We want to improve the world. And unfortunately, right now, we're at a crossroads where our Western society, particularly in the US and in Europe, is stagnating. And therefore, these types of endeavors, whether it's at Ralston College or other endeavors, this is not just unique to places like Ralston, but this idea that we can have a renaissance, that we can actually go back to the drawing board, remind ourselves where we come from, cherish the cultural achievements that we had as a species, particularly in the Western world, take the good stuff. We don't have to take everything. There were some, those more tribes that cultivated Greek knowledge were also brutal tribes. The Catholic Church certainly was brutal in many ways. So there are things that we can definitely condemn, but we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. In fact, we are not allowed to. It is unethical to do that. We need to preserve our history and our roots as a species, particularly the Western culture, the roots of the Western culture, which go back to Greece, proliferate throughout the Mediterranean, back to the church, and get translated into Latin, and then through Gutenberg get translated into vernacular. I just want to say one more thing here, which reminds me, what happened in the Gutenberg example is that not just did we have a printing press, which allowed us to replicate texts fast, we also, this was the same time when text was translated into vernacular from Latin. Latin was privy to only very elite type of people, the monks, and vernacular was accessible to everybody. And I think I see a similar revolution now with the frontier models such as GPT and Grok. What they're allowing us to do is, for example, this is a small example, but it's important. We are able now to read academic papers and translate them back into vernacular, literally translate them back, because for most people who are not familiar with academic papers, you don't really understand much. It's written in a way that you don't understand what they're saying. Let's leave it at that. So using something like Grok allows you to translate that back, to say, okay, what exactly are they saying? And the models are very good at actually translating that. And there's a similar effect here where the knowledge which is created in the academic world is actually being transmitted back to normal people. And that has a huge effect of not just democratizing knowledge, but also spurring innovation. And I think therefore, we are at a similar crossroads like Gutenberg. And I think, therefore, we also have the same type of culture wars where the elites will oppose this new democratic way of knowledge proliferation. We'll have other cultures, such as the Chinese, for example, absorbing our knowledge, while we here in the West will resist progress, in part because the elites will not want to share the knowledge with everybody else. We need to overcome that. I think the Trump administration is part of that endeavor. I think companies like American Optimism, organized by Andreessen Horowitz, SpaceX, Palantir, and the Real, these companies all have the same, Tesla, NVIDIA, many companies are in the same realm trying to overcome this elitist backfiring and trying to take knowledge, translate it into vernacular, and proliferate it throughout society because knowledge is not a zero-sum game. Elitism is, knowledge is not. And that's what is so important. And I think these types of lectures, like this Ralston College lecture, really are very helpful. And I do recommend people go online, check it out, go visit them, check your own local institutions for potential lectures like that. It's worth. Antiquity and the ancients and the Renaissance and all these questions are incredibly important today. They're a lot more relevant than you might think. And I think they're important also for us hedge fund managers because I think concepts of beauty and truth are key to wealth creation as much as they are to progress. Thank you.